Senator Santorum, let's begin with you.
I'm Rick Santorum, and I'm thrilled to be here at the campus of North Florida. And I'm especially thrilled because I'm here with a North Florida resident who lives right down the beach from Jacksonville. My mom, who's 93 years old, who's with me here tonight. And I better just stop right there.
Can you tell me what specific actions you'll take to address the costly consequences of illegal immigration while preserving the rights of those who seek to immigrate legally?
All right, Senator Santorum, let's take that question. But also, in the course of that question, express your opinion on what we heard from Governor Romney, that self-deportation or illegal immigrants leaving the country voluntarily is a possible solution.
Well, the possible solution is, I actually agree with Governor Romney. The bottom line is that we need to enforce the laws in this country. We are a country of laws. People come to this country. My grandfather came to this country because he wanted to come to a country that respected him. And a country that respects you is a country that lives by the laws that they have. And the first act when to come to this country is to disobey a law. It's not a particularly welcome way to enter this country. What I've said is from the very beginning that we have to have a country that not only do you respect the law when you come here, but you respect the law when you stay here. And people who have come to this country illegally have broken the law repeatedly. If you're here, unless you are here in a trust fund, you've been working illegally. You've probably stolen someone's Social Security number illegally. And so it's not just one thing that you've done wrong. You've done a lot of things wrong. And as a result of that, I believe that people should not be able to stay here. And so I think we need to enforce the law at the border, secure the border. Secondly, we need to have employer enforcement, which means E-Verify. And then we need to have not only employer sanction, but we have to have people who are found who are working here illegally. They need to be deported. That is, again, the principle of having a rule of law and living by it. I am very much in favor of immigration. I'm not someone, my dad came to this country, and I'm someone who believes that we need immigration. We are not replacing ourselves. We need not only immigration to keep our population going, but we need immigration because immigrants bring a vitality and a love of this country that infuses this country with great energy. And so I support legal immigration, but we need to enforce the law. And in fact, if you don't create an opportunity for people to work, they will leave because they can't afford to stay here.
Yes, good evening. The U.S. has been largely away in its foreign and trade policy with Latin America. In the meantime, Iran and China have been increasing their influence over and involvement in Latin America through the leftist and left-leaning governments. What would each of you do as president to more deeply engage in Latin America and, importantly, to support the governments and the political parties that support democracy and free markets?
Senator Santorum, are you with Congressman Paul?
No, I'm not with Congressman Paul, and I'm not with Barack Obama on this issue. Our policy in Central and South America under this administration has been abysmal. The way we have treated, in particular, countries like Honduras. Honduras was stood up for the rule of law, which threw out a would-be dictator who was using the Chavez playbook from Venezuela in order to try to run for re-election in Honduras. And the United States government, instead of standing behind the pro-democracy, the people in the parliament, the people in the Supreme Court who tried to enforce the Constitution of Honduras, instead of siding with them, the Democrats, President Obama sided with two other people in Central America and South America, Chavez and Castro and Obama, sided against the people of Honduras. This is a consistent policy of siding with the leftists, siding with the Marxists, siding with those who don't support democracy, not standing up for our friends in Colombia, not standing up for our friends who want to engage and support America, who want to be great trading partners and great allies for our country, to be able to form that kind of bond that is so essential in our own hemisphere. The European Union understood how important it was for diverse people to be able to come together in an economic unit. We not only have to come together as an economic unit, but the threat of terrorism, the threat of Iran now in Venezuela and in other places, and Cuba and in Nicaragua, the threat of radical Islam growing in that region, it's absolutely important for us to have a president who understands that threat and understands the solution is closer ties. I will visit that area of the world repeatedly to solidify those ties when I become president.
Let me let Congressman Paul quickly respond.
The senator mentions standing up for some of these nations, but he doesn't define it. But standing up for nations like this usually means that we impose ourselves, go and pick the dictators, undermine certain governments, also sending them a lot of money. It doesn't work. Most of the time this backfires. They resent us. We can achieve what he wants in a much different way than us using the bully attitude that you will do it our way. This is not a benefit to us. And besides, where are you going to get the troops and where are you going to get the money? Because you're talking about force. And I know of a much better way than using force to get along with people.
I don't know what answer Congressman Paul was listening to. He obviously wasn't listening to my answer. What I talked about is building strong economic relationships, strong national security relationships. No one's talking about force. No one's talking about going into Cuba or going into Venezuela. It's talking about the other countries in the region which are being influenced greatly by those countries that are tending and moving toward those militant socialists instead of the United States. Why? Because we've ignored them. You had a president of the United States that held a Colombian free trade agreement. Colombia, who's out there in the front lines working with us against the narco-terrorists, standing up to Chavez in South America. And what did we do? For domestic political purposes, the president of the United States sided with organized labor and the environmental groups and held Colombia hanging out to dry for 3 years. We cannot do that to our friends in South America.
Senator Santorum?
Well, I would just say in answer to the question that, as I mentioned last debate, in 2006, I went out and authored a letter with 24 other senators asking for major reform of Freddie and Fannie, warning of a meltdown and a bubble in the housing market. I stood out, I stood tall and tried to get a reform, and we couldn't do it. The reform we need is to gradually decrease the amount of mortgage that it can be financed by Freddie or underwritten by Freddie and Fannie over time, keep reducing that until we get rid of Fannie and Freddie. The bigger issue here is these two gentlemen who are out distracting from the most important issues we have by playing petty personal politics. Can we set aside that Newt was a member of Congress and used the skills that he developed as a member of Congress to go out and advise companies, and that's not the worst thing in the world, and that Mitt Romney is a wealthy guy because he worked hard and he's going out and working hard, and you should guys leave that alone and focus on the issue.
Senator Santorum, most of the polls, almost all the polls, want the wealthiest Americans to pay more in taxes in order to balance the budget. Why are they wrong, in your opinion?
Because we need to have as much money funneling through this economy as possible, and the people who make those investments are people who have resources and wealth. We want them to deploy that wealth in the most productive way possible. And when you increase tax rates and you make things much more expensive to do, in other words, the rate of return is not as profitable, then they tend up doing things like investing in non-taxable instruments and other things that don't employ people. And so what I believe is we need to reduce taxes. Look, I'm honest, I don't reduce the higher top rate as much as these other folks do. I take the Reagan approach. Ronald Reagan at a 28% top rate. If it's good enough for Ronald Reagan, it's good enough for me, and that's what we put the top rate as. And we have a bottom rate of 10%. I believe in a differential. I don't believe in a flat tax. I believe in a simplified tax code with 5 deductions and focus on simplifying, creating 2 rates. I disagree with Newt also on this. I don't believe in a zero capital gains tax rate. I don't think you need to get to zero to make sure that there's an efficient deployment of capital and investment. I think if you get to zero, then in fact, guys like Mitt Romney, who again, I wish I made as much money as Mitt Romney, but he wouldn't probably be paying much at all in taxes. And I think that as long as the tax is not one that deters a proper investment to be able to deploy capital and to get jobs created, then lower rates are better than zero when it comes to the issue of capital gains.
Senator Santorum?
I believe America is a frontier nation, And obviously the frontier that we're talking about is the next one, which is space, and that we need to inspire. One of the big problems we have in our country today is that young people are not getting involved in math and science and not dreaming big dreams. And so NASA or the space program or space is important. But NASA is one component of that. Our space defense is another area. I think both of which are very, very important. I agree that we need to bring good minds in the private sector much more involved in NASA than the government bureaucracy we have. But let's just be honest. We run a $1.2 trillion deficit right now. We're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar, and to go out there and promise new programs and big ideas, that's a great thing to maybe get votes, but it's not a responsible thing when you have to go out and say that we have to start cutting programs, not talking about how to grow them. We're going to cut programs. We're going to spend, under my administration, we're going to spend less money every year. Every year, year to year to year, the federal government amount of spending will go down for 4 years until we get a balanced budget. And you can't do that by grand schemes, whether it's the space program or, frankly, whether it's the Speaker's Social Security program, which will create a brand new Social Security entitlement. Those are things that sound good and maybe make big promises to people, but we've got to be responsible in the way we allocate our resources. We just listened to the President of the United States the other night completely ignore the biggest problem facing this country when it comes to our financial health. We've been downgraded as a country, and the President of the United States completely ignored any of the heavy work, the hard work, and being honest with the American public about what we have to do to get our fiscal house in order. And I think that's the point I would make here. Going around and promising a whole bunch of new ideas and new projects and big ideas, that was fine, and maybe we could do that. I supported the doubling of the National Institutes of Health, but we didn't have a $1.2 trillion deficit. We weren't at over. We are now going to reach $16 trillion, which is more than our whole GDP. We were not in that situation 15 years ago. We are in a different world. We need leaders who are going to be honest with the people of this country of the problems we have and have bold solutions to make that happen. I'll do that. All three of these folks sound great, and I agree with them. I would just add that health savings accounts, which I introduced 20 years ago with John Kasich, is really the fundamental reform of getting consumers back involved in the health care system. The problem with the answers from Congressman Gingrich and Governor Romney is that, well, they didn't always say what they're saying. Governor Romney was the author of Romneycare, which is a top-down government-run health care system, which, read an article today, has 15 different items directly in common with Obamacare. Everything from the increase in the Medicaid program, not just the government is going to mandate you buy something as a condition of breathing, mandate that you buy an insurance policy, something that Governor Romney agreed to at the state level, something Congressman Gingrich for 20 years advocated, that the federal government can force each and every person to enter into a private contract, something that everyone now, at least up on the state, says is radically unconstitutional. Congressman Gingrich supported for 20 years. Governor Romney supported in the state, a state that is pretty much a model for what Obamacare is going to look like. Highest health care costs in the country, 27% above the average. Average waiting time, 94% of the people in Massachusetts are now insured, but there was just a survey that came out and said 1 in 4 don't get the care they need because of the high cost. So you have a card, you're covered, but you can't get care. This is the top-down model that both of these gentlemen say they're now against, but they've been for, and it does not provide the contrast we need with Barack Obama if we're going to take on that most important issue. We cannot give the issue of health care away in this election. It is too foundational for us to win this election.
Quick rebuttal from Speaker Gingrich and then Governor Romney.
Well, in my case, I think Rick is lumping us together rather more than is accurate. If you go to healthtransformation.net, I founded the Center for Health Transformation. I wrote a book in 2002 called Saving Lives and Saving Money. It calls for you and your doctor and your pharmacist and your hospital to have a relationship. I believe in something like patient power. I didn't advocate federal mandates. I talked about at a state level, finding a way which included an escape clause that people didn't have to buy it. Finding a way to try to have people have insurance, particularly for wealthy people who are simply free riding on local hospitals. But the fact is, it was a personal system dramatically different than either Romneycare or the version Rick just described.
Governor Romney.
The system that we put in place in our state was something we worked out with the labor community, the healthcare community, business, and the citizens of the nation. We came together. It was voted by a 200-person legislature. Only 2 voted no. Our system has a lot of flaws, a lot of things I do differently, has a lot of benefits. The people of the state like it by about 3 to 1. We consider it very different than Obamacare. If I were president, day 1, I will take action to repeal Obamacare. It's bad medicine, it's bad economy. I'll repeal it. And I believe the people of each state should be able to craft programs that they feel are best for their people. I think ours is working pretty well. If I were governor, it would work a heck of a lot better.
All right, very quickly, go ahead.
What Governor Romney just said is that government-run, top-down medicine is working pretty well in Massachusetts, and he supports it. Now think about what that means going up against Barack Obama, who you're going to claim, well, top-down government-run medicine at the federal level doesn't work and we should repeal it, and he's going to say, wait a minute, Governor. You just said that top-down government-run medicine in Massachusetts works well. Folks, we can't give this issue away in this election. It is about fundamental freedom, whether the United States government or even a state government. You have Amendment 1 here, offered by Scott Pliken, who, by the way, endorsed me today, and it's going to be on your ballot as to whether there should be a government mandate here in Florida. According to Governor Romney, that's okay. The state does it, that's okay. If the state wants to enforce it, that's okay. Those are not the clear contrasts we need if we're going to defeat Barack Obama and $1 billion.
Let's go to Miami.
I got it.
Very quickly.
Rick, I make enough mistakes in what I say, not for you to add more mistakes to what I say. I didn't say I'm in favor of top-down government-run health care. 92% of the people in my state had insurance before our plan went in place, and nothing changes for them. They own the same private insurance they had before. And for the 8% of people who didn't have insurance, we said to them, if you can afford insurance, buy it yourself. Any one of the plans out there. You can choose any private plan. There's no government plan. And if you don't want to buy insurance, then you have to help pay for the cost of the state picking up your bill, because under federal law, if someone doesn't have insurance, then we have to care for them in the hospitals, give them free care. So we said no more. No more free riders. We're insisting on personal responsibility. Either get the insurance or help pay for your care. And that was the conclusion that we reached.
Does everybody in Massachusetts have a requirement to buy health care?
Everyone has a requirement to either buy health care or pay the state for the cost of providing them free care. Because the idea of people getting something for free when they could afford to care for themselves is something that we decided in our state was not a good idea.
So in Massachusetts, just to understand that, in Massachusetts, everybody is mandated as a condition of breathing in Massachusetts to be able to buy health insurance. And if you don't, you have to pay a fine. What's happened in Massachusetts is people are now paying the fine because health insurance is so expensive, and you have a pre-existing condition clause in yours, just like Barack Obama. So what's happening in Massachusetts, the people that Governor Romney has said he wanted to go after, the people that were free ridership has gone up 5-fold in Massachusetts. 5 times the rate it was before. Why? Because I'll be happy to give you the study. 5 times the rate it's gone up. Why? Because people are ready to pay a cheaper fine and then be able to sign up to insurance, which are now guaranteed under Romneycare, then pay high-cost insurance, which is what's happened as a result of Romneycare.
First of all, it's not worth getting angry about. Secondly, secondly, 98% of the people have insurance. And so the idea that more people are free riding the system is simply impossible. Half of those people got insurance on their own. Others got help in buying the insurance. Look, I know you don't like the plan that we had. I don't like the Obama plan. His plan cuts Medicare by $500 billion. We didn't, of course, touch anything like that. He raises taxes by $500 billion. We didn't do that. He wasn't interested in the 8% of the people that were uninsured. He was concerned about the 100% of the people of the country. Obamacare takes over health care for the American people. If I'm president of the United States, I will stop it. And in debating Barack Obama, I will be able to show that I have passion and concern for the people in this country that need health care, like this young woman who asked the question. But I will be able to point out that what he did was wrong. It was bad medicine. It's bad for the economy, and I will repeal it.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
Wolf, what Governor Romney said is just factually incorrect. Your mandate is no different than Barack Obama's mandate. It is the same mandate.
All right.
He takes over,
All right.
You take over 100%, just like he takes over 100%, requires the mandate.
All right.
The same fines that you put in place in Massachusetts are fines that he puts in place in the federal level.
Thank you very much and good evening. We have many qualified Hispanic leaders. Which of our Hispanic leaders would you consider to serve in your cabinet?
Senator Santorum.
Well, I mean, I hate to throw one to Fleur, but obviously your Senator Marco Rubio is a pretty impressive guy.
First, on a lighter subject, I want to ask each of these gentlemen why they think their wife would make a great first lady. Unfortunately, Senator Santorum, your wife is not here tonight.
Yeah, she's not. She's doing what she does incredibly well, which is to be a mother to our 7 children, and she's my hero. She's someone who has been, well educated. She was a neonatal intensive care nurse for 9 years, one of the most advanced nurseries in the country. She went on to because she saw all these ethical challenges there, so she went on and got a law degree so she could deal with those in the legal world. And then when she got married, she gave that up. She walked away and walked into something that she felt called to do, which is to be a mom and to be a wife. And we've had 8 children. We are blessed to be raising 7. We've been through a lot together, losing a child, having a child with a disability that we have now, our little Bella, and the amount of love for these special kids is just palpable in her. She wrote a book about our son that we lost called Letters to Gabriel, about that ordeal that we went through. That book, that little book, has saved countless. We know of at least hundreds of lives that were saved because people read that book and realized that the child that we're carrying had the dignity to be loved and nurtured irrespective of what malady may befallen that baby in the womb. And so many children were born and are alive today because of that book. She's also written a book on manners. That's something that we have 7 children, so we know that kids are not born good. And so manners is very important in our house, and she wrote a storybook because there were all sorts of how-to books on manners, but there was no storybook teaching manners through, well, how Christ taught us, through stories. And that's what she did, and that book is hopefully somewhat civilized some children around this country.
Hi, my name is Jorge Millares. I live here in Jacksonville, and when I was 3 years old, I was very blessed that my parents brought me here from Cuba. They brought me here so that I could be raised in freedom and in liberty. President Obama has recently announced that he is liberalizing trade and travel policies. What would be your position as president toward the island of Cuba?
Senator Santorum.
I would oppose it. I've been 100% in support of the Cuban people and their right to have a free Cuba, and the United States should stand on the side of the Cuban people against these despots who are not just reigning terror, continuing reign of terror in Cuba, but now have their puppet Chavez in Venezuela, and Noriega, and Morales, and it keeps like a cancer growing. So the idea that a president of the United States would take the heart of the cancer that is in Central and South America and begin to reward behavior that has spread this cancer because of our dilly-dallying and our inattentiveness to the problems in Central and South America. Now we're going to reward the secret police that are as present in Venezuela as they are in Cuba. We're going to reward this type of thuggery, this type of Marxism in our region. We're going to reward a country that is now working with these other countries to harbor and bring in Iran and the terrorists, the jihadists who want to set up missile sites and to set up training camps. And so we're going to reward this behavior by opening up and liberalizing. This is the exact wrong message at the exact wrong time.
Thank you, Wolf. I am joined now by Elizabeth Cuevas Neunder. She is the CEO and founder of the Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce in Florida. She's based out of Tampa. And I'm pretty sure, Elizabeth, your question has to do with the beautiful island of Puerto Rico.
Seguro que sí. Good evening, buenas noches. I am bilingual, proud of it. My question is to the candidates. We have 4 million Puerto Ricans in United States voters, 3.8 in Puerto Rico. We have been treated as second-class citizens, and just now our governor's name was not mentioned as a VP possibility, a great governor. My question to you is, where do you stand for Puerto Rico to become a state? And secondly, where do you stand on domestic trade between Florida and Puerto Rico, between Tampa Bay and Ponce ports, which had been neglected?
All right, Senator Santorum, let's throw that question to you.
All right,
the question about, do you support Puerto Rico potentially as the 51st state?
Well, first, I'll give a shout out to Governor Luis Fortuño, who's a good friend of mine, and someone, I know him and his family. We've known each other for many years. We actually used to go to church together. And so I spoke to Luis this week. And I've been to Puerto Rico many times. And actually, when I was a United States Senator, we did a lot of work with Puerto Rico. Because of my relationship with many friends down there, I was made aware of problems, for example, in the Medicaid program. We went down and we actually passed things to help with reimbursement rates, which were deplorably low in Puerto Rico. We also worked on hurricane relief and a whole host of other things as a result of my relationship with many Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania and developed those relationships on the island. I believe in self-determination. The Puerto Rican people should have the opportunity to be able to speak on this. I have supported that. I don't take a position one way or the other on statehood, Commonwealth, independence. That's for the people of Puerto Rico to decide. But I also supported a lot of things to help the Puerto Rican economy. Puerto Ricans are United States citizens, and the poverty, the unemployment rates simply are simply not something that we as Americans should allow to occur in our country. And we need to make sure that there are pro-growth, supply-side economics to make sure that Puerto Rico can be successful as an economy in that island, and I believe they can, and under my administration, that's something that I would work toward.
I'll take that as a maybe, right? Statehood, not statehood?
Oh, no, I take no position on that. That's, I've supported, the opportunity for them to make that decision.
Suzanne Bass, I'm an attorney in Jacksonville. Welcome to the great city of Jacksonville. My question, how would your religious beliefs, if you're elected, impact the decisions that you make in the office of the presidency?
Faith is a very, very important part of my life, but it's a very, very important part of this country. The foundational documents of our country, everybody talks about the Constitution, very, very important, but the Constitution is the how of America. It's the operator's manual. The why of America, who we are as a people, is in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created and equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. The Constitution is there to do one thing: protect God-given rights. That's what makes America different than every other country in the world. No other country in the world has its rights based in God-given rights, not government-given rights. And so when you say, well, faith has nothing to do with it, faith has everything to do with it. If rights come... If our president believes that rights come to us from the state, everything government gives you, it can take away. The role of the government is to protect rights that cannot be taken away. And so the answer to that question is, I believe in faith and reason in approaching the problems of this country, but understand where those rights come from, who we are as Americans, and the foundational principles by which we have changed the world.
I want you to tell voters who are watching or are here on this campus right now why you are the one person on this stage that is most likely to beat Barack Obama. Senator, I'll repeat the question for you. Why do you think you're the best, most qualified person on this stage to beat President Obama?
I agree with the previous two speakers that this is a big election. This is an election about fundamental freedom. It's an election about who America is going to be. We're a country that's going to be built great from the bottom up, as our founders intended, or from the top down. I just think I'm a lot better than the previous two speakers to be able to make that case to the American public. I'm not for a top-down government-run healthcare system. I wasn't for the Wall Street bailouts like these two gentlemen were. Governor Romney talks about private sector and how he's going to bring private sector. When the private sector was in trouble, he voted for government to come in and take over the private sector and be able to, and to bail them out. Cap and trade, both of them bought into the global warming hoax, bought into the cap and trade, top-down control of our energy and manufacturing sector. If you look at President Obama's speech the other night, what did he lead with? He led with manufacturing. He led with manufacturing. Why? Because the base of his party, the ones that are always the ones that, not the base, the swing vote in his party, the ones that Ronald Reagan was able to get. We call them Reagan Democrats up in Pennsylvania. Those are the blue-collar working people of America who know that this president has left them behind. He has a plan for them, and it's more dependency, not work, not opportunity. So he went out and tried to make a play for manufacturing. That's been the center point of my campaign. The center point of my campaign is to be able to win the industrial heartland, get those Reagan Democrats back, talking about manufacturing, talking about building that ladder of success all the way down so people can climb all the way up. That's why I'm the best person to be able to go out and win the states that are necessary to win this presidency and govern with the mandate that Newt just talked about.